Welcome to the life you crave. Simple and sustainable weight loss for women who have better things to do than diet. I'm your host, Leah Pinelli. I help ambitious, badass women stop overeating, overworking, and overgiving to lose weight from a place of love. I'll help you simplify weight loss, end your overwhelm, and create the life you crave. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to this podcast. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Life You Crave podcast. On today's show, I am really excited. I have a guest for us today, you guys, that is unlike any other guest I've ever had on. I have Dr. Melissa McCreery, who is a psychologist, emotional eating expert, author, host of the Too Much on Her Plate podcast, great name, by the way, and the creator of Your Missing Piece, spelled P-E-A-C-E, the program that supports smart, busy women in creating freedom from overeating and peace with food. So I mentioned that she's different from anybody else because she and I are super aligned in the work we do. And this is the first time that I've really had somebody on the podcast that is so closely aligned with my work. So I can't wait for this conversation. I'm going to finish reading her bio, though, because it is worthy of being read. She has helped thousands break cycles with overwhelm, overload, and overeating without feeling deprived and without depending on ridiculous amounts of willpower. Participants in her signature program lose their cravings and their overeating habits. Dr. McCreery's approach to helping working mothers, busy professionals, and stressed out business owners emphasizes leveraging your unique strengths, ditching diet mentality, and using the power of psychology. Her perspective has been featured in, and now you guys just get ready for this because she said, you don't need to read all that. And I was like, oh no, girl, I am reading all of this. You have earned it. She has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, CNN Health, Weight Watchers Magazine, Good Housekeeping, Working Mother, Fitness, Women's Health, Real Simple, and Self. I am so honored to have you on the show today, Dr. McCreery.
I'm so excited about the conversation that I just know we're going to have.
Yes. Okay, so we have to start off with, I would love to hear, how did you come into this work? And yeah, you support women, I know for sure. Do you support people of other genders, or is it specifically female identified folks?
I work with people who identify as women.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Okay, so how did you come into this work?
Well, so as you said, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I was in private practice doing therapy for many years, did some research on the way to being able to do that. My entire career has been working with women and food and weight and their bodies and their image around that and their goals around that in every combination, every single way you could tangle that up. And I thought I knew what that was and was much surprised, both as I became a psychologist and then as I was doing this work and I was conferring with other colleagues. And I guess the short answer to your question is that I sat across from one to many incredible women who were doing incredible things in their lives, who were, mastering amazing businesses, who had figured out the art of being in 3 places at once with their kids, who could just do the impossible. But then when it comes to their eating and emotional eating and their weight and their bodies, they would do this big sigh and they would say, I know this is something I will always struggle with.
Yes, that word.
Yes, I know this is something it's always going to be an issue for me.
Yes.
I know this is something I'm always going to have to be very vigilant about. Or they would say, maybe I just need to give up.
Yes.
Maybe I just need to, again, this is always going to be an issue for me. And I was hearing that from these amazing women who knew they could do, they have superpowers. And I was also hearing that professionally. People were talking about managing people's eating and helping people have self-control and giving stupid advice like, if you're, you should recognize stress eating and just not do it. Right.
and easily said, right?
I know that's not, the realm of possibilities that people were being presented with was so stupid and small. And there's so much more that's possible. And I know that. I know that from my own life. I know that from the work I do with my clients. And so I eased out of doing private practice and moved online and started doing this globally and began creating resources and doing coaching to help women. Because let me just say one more thing about that. The thing I hear so often from people isn't, about a number on the scale. It's that I wish I could stop thinking about this stuff. I wish if I could free up the space in my brain that this stuff takes up, and how my first thought in the morning is whether yesterday was a good day or a bad day, or whether I'm good or bad, or if I could just, click my heels together and make that be gone, I'd be so happy. And so that's what I do. I help people create that kind of freedom.
Okay. So everybody's going to want to know, how do you do that?
Well, we put our heels together.
Right. Sprinkle some fairy dust. Yeah.
I think there's a complicated answer to that. And the simple answer is, which is not as simple to do, but you really have to start identifying the paradigm, the framework that you've been stuck in and that you have been educated in probably your whole life, so that you can see it. It's like changing your glasses, right? You've been wearing red glasses and we want to put on blue glasses so that you can see there's a different way of doing things.
Yes.
And it starts not with what your brain wants to tell you, which is, okay, what am I going to eat? Tell me what I'm going to eat. It starts by really getting clear on how your thinking is keeping you trapped, how the culture is keeping you trapped, and designing a new path forward for yourself.
Yes, absolutely. So you noticed the need in your clients. You noticed that there was a need. Did you ever struggle yourself with these issues, or did it really feel like I'm noticing a need and I'm really just going to go after the solution for how to solve for it?
I did struggle with these issues. And I think that it's so interesting because I would hear people who had these, these before and after stories, and they would tell their powerful stories. For me, my struggles this is the work I do with my clients. But it's always hard to talk about when people haven't experienced it. My struggles dissolved, right? I did a lot of work. If you can give me any strength assessment you want, and persistence is my number one. If I want something to happen, I am going to make it happen.
Yeah.
I did a lot of work. I did a lot of therapy. I went and got my own, PhD. I read all the books. And one day I woke up and this wasn't an issue for me anymore. Yeah. And so the example I often use, and I don't know if I have a feeling we're going to talk about the difference between different ways of changing behavior. But the example I think about all the time is that I was also a chronic nail biter when I was
yeah.
And I hated it. They were painful. They were ugly. I was embarrassed of it. But, and much like food, you can be really good for a week.
Yeah.
And then you bite them all off and it just feels like, okay, I'm back at square one. It's all ruined, right? And I tried everything. I tried the discipline. I got my mom to help me. We had the little charts. We put the stuff on your nails that tastes horrible, right? Nothing worked. And then one day I woke up and realized I have fingernails. Like, I don't do this anymore. And now looking back, I know that I dealt with the reasons. Right. I had healed the reasons that were causing me to be worried and anxious and bite my nails. The discipline, the trying really hard, the waking up every morning and saying, I will not bite my nails. I will not. It's the same thing with food.
Yeah.
We've been aiming all our energy in the wrong direction, trying to be strong. And that doesn't fix anything. It just creates a recipe where we have to keep being strong.
Right. So how do you change behaviors? I mean, is it a matter of, okay, let's read Atomic Habits and, follow what James Clear says? Or what is your approach to behavioral change?
I think when it comes to food, it starts with something I imagine you talk about all the time and tell your clients all the time, that there's a reason this is happening. Mm-hmm. If you are eating, there is always a reason. Yeah. And diet culture and diet mentality sends us way off in left field, because what you have probably been taught your whole life is that if you want to change your eating or if you want to change your weight, then here's a plan, and you should follow it. And if you are not following it, you need to work harder.
Yes.
Right? And if it doesn't work, it's because you didn't do it right.
Right.
Or you didn't do it hard enough, or you didn't
Yes.
do it long enough, right? It's all about blaming yourself.
Yeah.
And so then what we get taught is, okay, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna take some deep breaths. I'm gonna get my energy back. I'm gonna start over again on Monday or the next full moon on a January 1st or when, right? I'm gonna start over again, and this time I will be better, and I will be stronger, and I will be more perfect. And what I always ask people to visualize is that this mentality literally has you running. It's like running on a treadmill or a hamster wheel. Yeah. And the myth is that if you could just go faster, you'll get off of it. And it's such a lie. The way you get off the hamster wheel is you start with this very simple and yet I think very profound truth, which is there is a reason you're eating.
Yeah.
Right. And it might be you need fuel. It might be that you skipped lunch. It might be that you are a number of different things. I've actually got 5 hidden hungers that I see all the time, particularly in busy, high-achieving women that we use food to try to feed. And
okay, tell us about those. What are the 5 hidden hungers?
Hidden hunger. Well, okay. And before I tell you about them, here's the thing. You got to control your nervous system, because they go together and they exacerbate each other. And so the first thing that is likely to happen as you hear about them is that as you're listening, it's really easy to throw up your hands and say, okay, but I have all of them, so I'm ruined.
Yes.
So hidden hungers. There is a hunger for stress relief that is triggered by stress, and that shows up as stress eating, right? Hunger for rest. Whether we're exhausted because we're sleep deprived or we're exhausted because life is exhausting us. But that shows up when you find yourself eating for energy, right? Eating because you're too tired to do anything else. There's also a hunger for self-care and me time. And right, we're too busy. We're too busy. We don't have time for ourselves. We fall off our priority list. And so you end up comfort eating or eating as a reward, eating at the end of the day because you feel like I deserve something. Yes. And oh, by the way, I also have this exhaustion going on, and I can maybe think of some other things, but they're really too much work, right? So hunger for self-care and me time, hunger for emotional effectiveness. That's where emotional eating shows up. And that's a little complicated because oftentimes people think, well, I'm an emotional eater. So where does that leave me? I'm eating emotionally. I have this hard thing happen. Sometimes emotional eating happens because we need more tools. Maybe I'm somebody who's really not comfortable with anger. And so I eat to kind of push it down. But sometimes emotional eating happens because I know very well how to deal with anger, but guess what? I'm tired and I'm stressed and I'm too busy. I have these other hidden hungers going on, and my bandwidth or my interest in dealing with my emotions is, just this big. And chocolate sounds a whole lot better. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So what do we talk about? We talked about emotions. We talked about stress. We talked about exhaustion, being too busy, hidden hunger for compassion. This is a huge one. And it's one that I think there's a quiz on my website that you can take to identify, not that you have all the hidden hungers, but to identify what your primary hidden hunger is and what you can start to do to take care of it. And I think when people get the hidden hunger for compassion, they are the most confused. I've had to go back and kind of write the results explanation a couple of times over the years about that one. But think about it. This is what it looks like. When we're not getting enough compassion, we are being hard on ourselves, right? We're being judgy with ourselves. It's often triggered by things like overwhelm, exhaustion, all the other hidden hungers, right? You got all this stuff going on, the stress or whatever, and then you've got in your mind blaming yourself or telling yourself, I just shouldn't stress eat. I know I'm stress eating. I just shouldn't be doing that, right? Yes. And so a hidden hunger for compassion shows up kind of as like, shut up, I don't want to hear it eating. So it's like eating to push things down, eating to numb out, eating to just take a break from everything. the eating on autopilot because you just don't want to think about everything.
Yes.
So often that's because what you're really hungry for is kindness and understanding back to, hey, there's a reason this is happening.
Yeah.
I'm not broken. There's a reason, and I'm doing the best that I can.
Yeah. Yeah, I love those. And so I'm imagining there are a lot of people listening, like you said, who are like, holy cow, I have all of those all the time. And when you say compassion, you're really talking about, it sounds like self-compassion.
Yes.
Which I know in my work, that is one of the biggest areas of growth for a lot of my clients, because for decades, and, for most of my clients, for decades, there has been no self-compassion, particularly when it comes to eating behaviors and the results of those eating behaviors on our physical bodies, right? Like the idea of self-compassion is often initially totally rejected. Like, no, I don't want to have self-compassion. And the fear there is that if I have self-compassion, then I will lose my motivation to change this part of me that I don't love. And therefore nothing will change. And I'll get, usually the fear is I'm going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and worse and worse and worse. What do you have to say to that fear?
I just love the way you just put that, because what occurs to me as you're talking is that motivation is not a boot camp drill sergeant. Yeah. But I feel like in this area of in the wellness industry, and when it comes to all the advice people get about eating and food, that's what motivation has been. It's like boot camp. It's somebody yelling at you. It's saying you're lazy and you don't have enough willpower and you just need to be stronger. And that is not, we do a lot of work in my program around building momentum. Mm-hmm. And I really like that word, because when I think of momentum, I think of, the power that happens once you get something rolling, that it's self-perpetuating. It keeps going. And I believe your relationship with food should feel that way. Mm-hmm. You are going to have your relationship with food for the rest of your life. Who wants to have a boot camp drill sergeant yelling at you over your shoulder, or monitoring you, or creating a chart for you? Or this is not a 6-week program. Your relationship with food is for your life. That it's so precious.
Yes. I love that you just said momentum, because I too talk a lot about the myth of motivation, right? And I would often say you don't need motivation. What you need is determination. And the determination then is actually what evolves into the momentum, right? So it's kind of like these stages, right? It's like, because motivation waxes and wanes. And I love your point. Who wants the drill sergeant over our shoulder? But instead, it's like, I'm determined to make this work. I'm determined to figure this out. I'm determined to get the support I need. I'm determined to get to shift these eating behaviors that are making me miserable. I'm determined. And then actually starting to build step by step these new ways of being that creates the momentum. And what's fascinating about that is that shift in behavior, that when the pattern shifts, you're able to, like you said, wake up one day and be like, oh, I don't struggle with that anymore. That's phenomenal that I don't struggle with that anymore.
There's kind of an ongoing joke inside Your Missing Piece among members that's how results show up. They sneak up on you, where people will be talking about their wins. And because what happens is you're not really focused on, I will not binge. You're focused on, I'm thinking of specific examples. I'm really realizing how hard I am on myself. I'm going to be kinder to myself. I'm going to give myself more space. And the first thing your brain does is say, wait a minute. This feels really good. But what does this have to do with, or how am I going to change my eating, or how am I going to lose the weight, or how am I going to, brains are very skeptical. Brains do not like anything that's mushy, right? And so it takes some faith and it takes some convincing. But what happens is you focus on the right things. You focus on what you really need and what's really going on beneath the surface. And the power that food has in your life starts to dissolve. Those links get undone.
Totally.
When you were talking about I'm determined and showing up in that way, I really love that. I think there's a step that is required to get to that place, because I don't believe that diet culture gives us that kind of power.
Right.
I don't know about you, but what I hear from clients is, I know I should be doing this, or here's the plan that I have to follow, or I know I really can't eat sugar, or
Right.
it's this whole, your posture goes down,
Yes.
your voice gets kind of the powerful women. I'm always amazed when I hear people's backstories and what goes on in the rest of their lives, because the way people have come to show up for themselves around food, the years of this has just taken away so much confidence and so much power. And
Yeah. And that
showing up with that determination is critical. Yeah.
it's critical. The biggest shift that I had was going from this place of total confusion, right? Diet confusion, diet culture, diet mentality, really feeling victimized by my own body. And feeling like, and I hear this a lot from clients, it's not fair, right? It's not fair. Like, for me, I always use this as the example, but it's a good one. My sister, same parents, same household. She's the skinny sister. I was always the chubby sister, right? It's not fair. Like, we're eating the same foods, but yet they impact my body differently. And I can't seem to stop eating them, where she's like, she would eat one serving of pasta and she'd be out the door to, go play with her friends. And I was like, second helping, third helping, like, what? This isn't fair. This isn't fair, right? So there's going from that state of feeling victimized and out of control is such a big one, right? Feeling victimized and out of control, to recognizing you feel like your only option is diet culture, diet mentality. And that in and of itself, it's gaslighting. It feels like, it's the same pattern. It's just reiterating, you are out of control. You need these really tight plans and parameters in order for you to be acceptable and for your body to be acceptable. And what you're talking about, and I think what I experienced and what I also am talking about, is this idea that making these changes can actually come from a deeply empowered place, right? Like,
They have to.
They have to. Yeah. In order for them to be sustainable, and really starting to recognize, oh, wow, once I understand, once I have the good information, the education and the knowledge that isn't all tainted by what, the sugar industry wants us to think, or what Weight Watchers wants us to believe, or what Ozempic, as soon as we just kind of distill it down to, this is kind of the basics, we can work with that. And then when we really start to address, and that's not enough though, right? It's not enough. We can all Google. Most of my clients practically have PhDs in weight loss because they've done everything.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
But that's not enough, because what we need is to actually reject all of that, distill down what actually makes sense, and then start to go in on our relationship with food. Sounds like you're saying the same thing.
Absolutely. I think that so many amazing women have forgotten that they know what they know.
Yes.
They have forgotten that they're the only ones who've lived inside their bodies their whole entire lives. And that, I mean, if you get disconnected, and I think so many of us have had that experience in our lives, when you get disconnected from what you know about your body, what works for you, what you like, what your natural style of doing things is, there's so much of your power that gets lost there.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So much of your power gets lost. And reclaiming it can be such a beautiful process. I know for me, entering midlife, as they say, and all of these changes that my body is all of a sudden going through that aren't making any sense, and that, doctors are telling me one thing and another thing and all the things, and, going through my own kind of health journey. And I found myself in a very familiar place of feeling like my body's out of control again, in a different way, in kind of more of a health medical way, but still feeling out of control. And and not getting clear answers from my general practitioner or, my general physician, or, and then kind of being referred this way and that way. And I finally realized, I know what I can do. I know my own body well enough to know that I can take some action, some empowered action, without needing somebody to tell me what to do. Right. And I don't think that I would have realized that. Like, for example, I had a hunch that I was having a blood sugar issue because of how my energy was rising and dipping. Talked to my doctor about it. She's thinking, this lady doesn't know anything about blood sugar, which I kind of do know a bit about blood sugar. So I decided I'm going to figure this out for myself. I slapped on a continuous blood glucose monitor, And lo and behold, I dip into hypoglycemia multiple times a day. But I needed the data, like actual data from the monitor to show my doctor to say, hey, guess what? There's something going on here, right? But I don't think I would have felt empowered had I not gone through this process that you take your clients through, that I have gone through myself, to say, I actually have a great deal of self-knowledge. And this is not medical skepticism on my end. I'm a big fan of Western medicine. I'm also a big fan of functional medicine. I'm not bashing it, but I'm simply saying that we play a role. We have power within the story.
Yeah. And anybody who is watching the video of this or even listening to the audio, pay attention to what Leah's energy did as you were talking about coming from this place of power, right? That is not how 99.9% of women show up when they are not happy with their bodies or their eating or their binging or their weight, right? It is so different from that. And that place that you just demonstrated and described and talked about is where people say things like you say in the boardroom and like you say to your kids and like you say in difficult situations, like, I think, I want, I have decided that. I know what would be helpful, that we make decisions. Diet mentality has robbed people of their confidence to do that.
Totally.
And if you dive into any kind of change, I often say that if there was some weird program or some medical test that you could take that would pair you up with the perfect protocol for whatever your food issue was, it wouldn't work.
Right.
If you don't find a way to get to that place and remember that you are powerful and that you get to be an advocate for you, the most important advocate for you. It's
totally.
Huge.
I totally agree. And it's so funny because a lot of my clients have daughters or have young women that they care deeply about, maybe nieces or students. And I always say, how would you be advocating for her? Like if she was struggling with this, what would you be telling her? And it's always like night and day, right?
Yeah, it would be totally different.
Totally different. Totally different. And, it's the same with, in February, I take my clients through a program around radical self-love. And it is so uncomfortable for them, right? Which I get, but there's actually usually they're very resistant. They're like, I don't want to love this body. I don't want to love where I am at right now. And I always say to them, look, I'm from San Francisco, born and raised, love that city with all my heart, but I can be from San Francisco and also want to move to Hawaii. I don't have to hate San Francisco in order to also want to move to Hawaii to make a change, right? We can love ourselves. And I love how you said, Dr. McCreery, we have to love ourselves through the changes. I think the biggest mistake we make is trying to hate our way to be.
Oh, yeah. I will love myself when.
As soon as.
Here's the deal. I will teach this until the day I stop teaching. The place you end up is going to feel exactly like the path you took getting there.
Yeah.
So this whole idea that I can have this miserable relationship with food, I'm going to eat this, horribly strict food plan, but I'll have cheat days, right? And as my client said, who the hell wants a relationship with food that you have to cheat on? What kind of relationship is that? I would never have that in a marriage, right? So you get to start having the relationship with food you want to have. You have to before you get to the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The journey should feel good.
100%. I love you because that is exactly my methodology, because if it doesn't, you will not sustain it.
Yeah.
That's the whole problem, right? You will not sustain it. It has to feel good the whole way through. I often use the example of, I used to be an avid Bikram yoga practitioner, and I love Bikram yoga. Bikram is the 105 degrees, 90 minutes yoga. And I love it. I love Bikram yoga. I love the whole way, except for I will tell you that as soon as we're in that half moon, I'm like, what am I doing here? This is so uncomfortable. Get me out of here. But the thing is I move through it. And I always tell people that you don't have to love every single second of your health journey. That's unrealistic. I don't have to love every single second of the 90-minute class, but I need to love it overall, right? I need to love the experience overall. So there can be moments where you know what? I hate this. This sucks. That's okay. But it's but overall, I really love how I eat. I really love the way that I'm fueling my body. I really love the way that I'm caring for my body, right? Seeing it as self-care. Okay, one more question that I don't want to forget to ask you, because this is a really important one. I know that you have said that there are certain phrases that you don't find helpful, like certain labels, like emotional eating and stress eating. Can you say a little more about why those aren't helpful?
Well, I think sometimes it's a beginning of identifying what's going on. So sometimes it is helpful to be, oh, why have I been eating like crazy this week? Oh, it's the stress.
Yeah.
But for so many people, it's become this thing that people get talked about and it becomes a dead end. And so, yeah, of course I'm eating because I have stress, but there's nothing I can do about the stress. So of course I'm eating. Or yes, I'm emotionally eating, but it kind of, when we just apply this label, I think sometimes people walk away feeling less than, like somehow this magic label
stress eater
is supposed to change your behavior, right?
Yeah.
And the truth is, if you go back to the hidden hungers, sometimes I'm an emotional eater because I'm exhausted. Sometimes the place to intervene isn't with, I need to learn more about conflict and being comfortable, or I need to go work on my anxiety. Sometimes the way to deal with emotional eating is, I need some compassion. I'm being way too hard on myself, right? Or I just haven't slept well and I really got to work on that because nothing is going to get better until I start getting better sleep. Or so I think looking more broadly at how the different parts of your life interact and play together is really important.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, I teach this to clients as well now, but one of the things that I didn't realize before I learned about this work and about really shifting from the inside out is every day at 2:00, especially when I used to work in educational leadership. I was a dean of discipline of a major high school in the Bay Area. It was a hard job, right?
Yeah.
It was an emotional job, especially for me, because I'm a big, like my heart is going out all the time to kids as they're making awful decisions. And, but every day, right about 2:00, I could not get through the day without popping a bag of microwave popcorn in the staff kitchen, which everybody hated because it would smell up the whole office. But then also eating some kind of chocolate, usually chocolate covered almonds or whatever. And if I was trying to be good, quote unquote, I wouldn't have any chocolate in my office, but I always knew that, so-and-so right down the hall, she's got a big stash. I would go raid hers. But I needed chocolate to get through the afternoon, and coffee. I needed another cup of coffee, like my third cup of the day. And it wasn't until I started to do this work that I realized, I was definitely tired. I was emotionally drained, usually. It was a really tedious part of the day because usually there's no more interaction with people, but it's a lot of documenting and writing and emails and things like that. And now what I know, and now I don't work in that environment anymore, obviously, but now what I know is anytime it's after the hour about 1:00, if I have a chocolate craving, I used to think, oh, I've got a chocolate craving. I've got to go get some chocolate. Now I know, oh, I need a nap, right? Like I actually have used that symptom of craving something sweet, craving sugar actually now means I'm tired. I know that this means I'm tired. And so sometimes I can take a nap, sometimes I can't. But if I can, what's fascinating is that a nap, a short 20, 30, 120 minute nap, I often wake up and the craving is gone. Yeah. And I think that that's fascinating because to me, it's like, oh, this is me just knowing myself. It's a deep inner knowing of, to your point, these hidden hungers. But I'm telling you, when my life was very full, which is a euphemism for very busy at that time, it was very hard for me to recognize that chocolate craving was exhaustion.
Yeah. And you are a smart woman. Food becomes this shorthand for things. And we were just talking in a coaching meeting for the program about how things make perfect sense in your head.
Yep.
And that we were talking about one of the powerful things about the groups that we have, like, oh my gosh, when I start to talk about this, or I hear this other person talk about this, because we tell ourselves these things like, I'm tired, I need chocolate.
Yes.
Right? Or the example that came up in the group the other day was talking about, or I guess it was with an individual client, how I need to eat this because it's my fun for the day, right? Yeah. This is fun. And yet sometimes when you tease things out and you look at them quite a bit of the time, it's not what you're telling yourself it is.
Yeah.
It isn't relaxing. It isn't freedom. It isn't fun. It doesn't feel like a reward. It actually feels awful.
Awful.
Yeah.
Because that caffeine and sugar boost at 2:00 would just come crashing down right about the time that I was arriving home and had a young toddler and a clueless husband, still my husband, not so clueless anymore, but when our child was young, he was clueless. And all of a sudden I was, and this was the part of my day that I was looking forward to the most, right? I was getting to come home and relax and be with my family, but I was actually having a caffeine and sugar crash at that time. So what did I do? Just like you were talking about, it's the hamster wheel. Because so what I do, okay, well, I need a glass of wine and I need some cheese and crackers while I make dinner. And I was just grumpy and I was tired and it was everything I didn't want it to be. But exactly to your point, I was telling myself that I just need a glass of wine. I just need the chocolate. I just need a snack. And then I can get through this and thinking you're going to come out on the other side feeling the way that you want to feel, which is relaxed and connected to your family. At least it was for me. And the opposite would happen. I would be grumpy, totally not relaxed because I was exhausted and just needed to go to bed.
And by that time in the cycle, it is the worst place possible to be trying to conjure back to willpower, conjure up the willpower and the discipline to break it. Yeah. You're so far gone, in the hidden hunger cycle. You're so far gone. You don't have capacity anymore. And so, a glass of wine and a bowl of ice cream sounds like the best option.
It sounds like a great option.
Until you wake up with the guilt and the shame. And
and then you're tired the next day because you had a little too much wine. So then you drink more caffeine and it's just the cycle continues.
Yeah.
And that's why so many of my clients, and I'm sure it's the same for you, they will say, I can be quote unquote good all day long. But then once it's the evening, in the evenings, I totally lose it. Or the weekends, I totally lose it. And it's exactly for that purpose, right? I mean, first of all, just the fact that we're thinking that we have to be quote unquote good during the day is highly problematic in my world. But secondly is like, well, yeah, that totally makes sense. If you're pushing, cortisol is pumping all day. You're constantly stretched thin, especially for working moms. Of course, you're not going to have capacity at the end of the day that drill sergeant is asleep, the motivation is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anything else just sounds too exhausting.
Exactly.
Even if you can come up with the perfect solution.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I always say, I'm going to come home and do some yoga or go for a walk. No. That takes too much energy. I was tired.
I think the other piece that's really important to say, though, because we're describing all these really overwhelming patterns,
yes,
is that just like you can really quickly build this cycle of forces that work against you and they all come together, you don't have to rebuild your entire life to build a different cycle. And that is something that I hear over and over and over from people. They'll like sit back in their chair and they'll say, I cannot believe this simple thing made a difference, or I cannot believe this little change started to shift everything, or, people talking about habits disappearing. I can't believe that learning how to be nicer to myself, I haven't binged in the last 4 months. I used to do it every day. It's little things. Again, your brain is not going to believe that. Brains think we have to do big, dramatic, painful things. And, you have to clear out your pantry and you have to quit your job. And it's little shifts that take you in a different direction or get you off the hamster wheel that can have such a big impact because they build momentum too.
Yes.
Your brain won't believe it. When I'm saying this, you may be rolling your eyes. I'm talking to all of you who are saying, yeah, right. But it's true.
Yeah. Yes. Well, the last question that I have for you is about the 4 pillars to creating freedom from overeating. Can you touch on that a little bit before we wrap up?
Yeah, we can do it really quickly. Those are actually the 4 modules of my program. Mm-hmm. The key thing is what doesn't come first. The first pillar is to embrace your power, to take your power back.
Ooh, I love that.
To detox all, like you were saying, the library you have in your head of conflicting advice and shoulds and do's and don'ts, to learn how to keep your promises to yourself and have a confidence that you'll show up for yourself. That is the foundation.
Yeah.
It is only when you do that that you can move on to what's the second piece in my program, which is ditching diets and learning how to play with food in a way that's going to work for you. Yeah. And it's going to be different for everybody. That's the only thing I know in the decades I have done this work, is that there is not one way of eating that works for everybody.
100%.
But you cannot start playing with food until you are in a place of power, because it's another joke inside the program. We have this capacity to turn everything into a secret deprivation plan.
Yeah.
We will do that if we're not sitting in our own power.
Yep.
So ditching the diets, finding food freedom, the way of eating that works for you. The third pillar is becoming the CEO of your time and your energy. Again, whether that's taking your power back from circumstances, whether that's learning how to care for yourself when things aren't working out, but you get to be the boss of your time and energy. And I know there's real life, and I know there are constraints and all the things that your brain is telling you right now, but it could probably be better. And if we don't talk about that, everything you do with food is going to be short-term or difficult, way more difficult than it needs to be. And then the fourth pillar, which diet industry completely ignores, and I know you talk about it all the time, is forever freedom. It's everything you do needs to be either nimble enough or pleasant enough or self-perpetuating enough that it's a forever plan. Doesn't mean you're going to do the same thing every day for the rest of your life, but it means you are setting yourself up not to, I can do this for 6 weeks, or I can do Whole30, or I can do, right? I'm setting myself up to have a relationship with food that I want to have for the rest of my life.
Oh, yeah. I love that. We are so aligned, Dr. McCreery. I just had a client who, the first, was it 6 weeks that she was in our group, she was participating in, and she had been for a long time participating with the Octavia diet. And when she came to me, she said, I don't want to stop doing this diet. It's working for me. I just want to work on my mindset and my relationship with food. I said, no problem. Because I'm all like, if it's working for you, and when you say working, what I'm saying is working, it means this is something I can do for the rest of my life, and I love it. Like, that's the definition of working for me. Okay. So she was doing it and went through the first 6 weeks, and then about 7-8 weeks, and she signed up to stay on longer. And I asked her, I said, is this, what did I say? I do a lot of vision work with clients, really envisioning your future self and what it is that you would love to have in your life in terms of your health, your vocation, your time and energy, all of this. And I asked her, I said, I'm curious. I said, does your future self do the Octavia program? And she was like, no, that sounds awful. And so she decided to let it go. And now we've been working with that, right? Because that's really scary to take off those guardrails if you've been doing something that quote unquote worked, And so, but the point being that if you can't picture yourself happily doing this every day for the next 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, then we've got to reroute, because
you deserve something better.
Waste of energy. You deserve something better. I really love that your client said, why would I want a relationship with food that I have to cheat on? That was just those mic drop. That was just it, right? That is such a good one. Yeah. I always tell clients, we don't have cheat meals. Well, sometimes we will have exceptions to the way that we typically eat, right? Like, I don't typically eat cake, but sometimes I'll eat cake. It's an exception to how I typically eat. It's an exception. It's not a cheat, because we value ourselves too much to cheat on ourselves. So if you're not going to cheat on your partner, why would you cheat on yourself, right?
Why would you have a partner that you need to plan to cheat on once?
Right. I love it. I love all of this. Okay, Dr. McCreery, we are going to have all of your links and everything in the show notes. But for listeners to hear from you, where can they find you? Where can they learn more about your work and your program? Tell us how to reach you.
Too Much on Her Plate is what's easiest to remember. Too Much on Her Plate, TOO. Too Much on Her Plate is my website, toomuchonherplate.com. Too Much on Her Plate is my podcast. If you go to toomuchonourplate.com, you can take the Hidden Hungers quiz, download a roadmap of podcast episodes to get you started with. There's just always something going on over there. And that's also my handle on Facebook and Instagram.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That is so wonderful. I'm so glad that we got to connect today and have this conversation. I love how aligned we are, Dr. McCreery, but also I learned so much from this conversation, and getting to talk with you today has been such a pleasure. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you. This has been great.
You've been listening to The Life You Crave. I lost 30 pounds years ago without dieting, willpower, or deprivation. I'm on a mission to help other women, including you, do the same. You can book a free weight loss strategy session with me over at leahpinelli.com. That's LIAPINELLI.com. See you on our next call or on the next episode. And remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on iTunes.